the February meeting of the Board of Water Commissioners to order. Reading on the agenda, reading of the minutes of the previous meeting. Any problems? Additions, modifications? None.
I did not see anything. I'll make a motion to approve.
It was okay.
Okay, so I have a motion, I have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We're still going over auditing the bills, so we'll move on. Wait for Joanne to finish doing that, I guess. Cooper Lake improvements.
Assemblyman Cahill, well, we weren't successful in lobbying, for dollars when we went up there, and he, Senator Amador, were helping us. Assemblyman Cahill has written a letter to the head, Carl Hasty, the Speaker of the Assembly, for $5 million for us to be included in the New York State budget. I mean, I'm not optimistic, but at least he's carrying the ball as far as he can take it to help us.
Yeah.
So
Can keep our fingers crossed.
that's right. The contract for Schnabel that we let last month, that we approved last month, has been signed and sent in. And we haven't gotten it back yet from them, the countersign, but we will shortly. As I indicated, the drilling that, the preliminary drilling that we had to do has been completed for the Cooper Lake Dam. There's some stuff that they're gonna do minor compared to the rest on the West Dike in the spring. But the good news about the work that they're gonna do on the West Dike is we'll be able to have a up-to-date, accurate bathymetric map, current. And that will be, they'll then be able to tell us what that, we always talk about a 5-foot raise. We'll know what that number really is. We know we can't go above 5, but they'll, by knowing what the soils are back there, we'll be able to see, is the real number 4.5, is it 3, is it really 5? And so that's a good piece of information to have.
And then from that information, they'll be able to design or determine what the impact would be
Exactly.
in regards to
Yes.
and the slopes going into
Right.
other pieces of property.
Plus then we'll know ultimately what that potential is to raise the lake,
Okay.
if we decide to do that at some time down the road.
DEC's schedule?
I sent it in.
Okay.
I don't expect to hear anything.
Right.
That's kind of their MO. I think we would have heard something if we didn't send it in,
Right.
but sending it in, I don't expect a response or an approval.
And who knows how close they would even monitor that in regards to, I mean, we have a lot of dates and things, I mean.
My sense is from meeting with them, and I think you would agree, that they just want to see forward progress. And if there's a couple of blips back, as long as we're kind of moving in the right direction, I think they're going to work with us.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
So, I mean, even though we have, which I think is a pretty aggressive schedule there,
Correct.
I mean, I think there's a lot of leeway as money becomes available.
Right, I don't think they're gonna say, well, you're on track, but you missed this, interior milestone, we're gonna find it. When we met with him, the first thing he said was, orders on consent aren't good for us and they're not good for you, so let's try to work together and avoid it. The dam safety folks are a little different than some other departments within the DEC. They're very, very easy and nice to work with and very helpful.
And then there's also this hope that maybe at the federal level with this infrastructure bill that I could kind of ask Judy if she could just put together a letter to go to Gillibrand and Schumer just to kind of ask them to make sure that dam infrastructure is included as part of the infrastructure bill. Because, all the other fundings for water and everything else seem to exclude dams, so it wouldn't hurt just to get that information down to them to make sure that if they're negotiating or discussing that bill as it goes forward, that
Right.
dam infrastructure improvements are included in it.
Yep.
I read that proposal with respect to the monies that are being available.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look like it's going to be
what?
The infrastructure.
Oh, and everyone, oh, and that, I think there's a lot of negotiating that has to occur. There's already an infrastructure program called WIFI that's been funded, and the first projects are gonna come through that pretty soon, the first round.
And that's for wastewater and clean water, sewer water and,
Yeah, it's water in WIFIA, Water Infrastructure Funding Improvement Act, I think. It's based on TIFIA, which is a transportation, so that's what's done on the federal level, the roads and the bridges for a long time, the highway system, and they kind of modeled that. But, you know, that's been on the books for 4 or 5 years now, and they just started to fund some of those projects, and it's unclear how that's gonna impact anybody, because projects have to be $20 million. So you can bundle smaller projects, it's just, and part of the issue, and we got them to amend it, was, it's partial funding for projects, and the bonds that were associated with those were not going to be tax-free bonds. So the question became, who would buy them? Who would buy bonds that are tax-free bonds for municipal work? So that changed, so that whole thing, there's a lot of unknowns on the federal level. But we'll write the letter and see where we go.
include congressmen too. Senators saying that,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
don't want to exclude them.
Okay. You ordered all our bills there, Joanne, we can jump back there, so. Looking for a motion to accept the bills, pay the bills,
I make the motion to pay the bills.
I'll second.
okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks. 587 Roundabout.
Well, I hope, there seemed to be a hiccup with some of this on this memo, and some people got 2 pages, the same page, some people got whatever. I sent it around again, hoping that, you know, everyone would get the complete memo. But did you get 2 of the same page, or did you get 2 different pages? You got the first page, and you got the second.
Yeah,
There you go.
okay, thank you.
There's the second page.
Thanks.
You got it, and you got,
I got
I got it.
okay, good, okay, all right. Just for just in case you want, we got it, the correct one. Anyway, DOT is very open to the scale back version that Dennis and John and I kind of put together. And we got the new estimates, and I got them yesterday, and they're $406,000. Down from 1.1.
Nice.
No, I think that's way too low. I don't mean to be like a naysayer. I think the project is really gonna come in around 600,000 maybe. But the fact,
40 what?
4 or 6.
I'll give this to everybody, $406,642.32. The big difference is we're proposing to do 1,000 feet less of pipe, which means less excavation, less backfill. John Davidson and Bernier Larius actually was able to look at the map and say, God, if we put a valve here and a valve here and a valve here and a valve here and a valve here, we won't have to do any temporary water service for anybody. And that makes the project 3 weeks quicker. And it makes it much less expensive because a temporary water service was probably worth $250,000.
And that valve insertion is all included in that 400 that they're recommending?
No,
That's a separate issue.
it's a separate
That's
issue.
why I'm upping it.
Yeah, well, and also I think some of their estimates, I don't know how, but it came out of their book, so it must be right. The other thing that fell off the table, and I hesitate to mention this, is that they had 15% in there for construction management and 15% for design, and the 15% for design disappeared.
Just what?
Disappeared. And that's a huge chunk. So they either heard us, or they believe that by Bernier and Larios laying this out like this and sequencing it for them, the heavy lifting is done, and then it's just a question of doing bid documents.
Interesting.
It is. The good news is, what we're gonna have to give them up front is 406,000 and change, as opposed to 1.1 million. So even if the costs increase down the road, we pay those as they're incurred.
Now, how much borrowing will you do in advance? You know, you've got borrowing authority up to $1.5 million.
We'll borrow the whole amount on a bond issue, on a ban.
Okay.
Well, obviously, once the ban is done, and we have 600,000, 400, whatever we have left, that'll get applied against the principal. So when we actually go to bond, it only will be what we actually spend. So we'll have the money for the cost overruns, but the good news was that, you know, by scaling it back,
We saved a lot of money.
yeah, and really, John was instrumental in saying, if we do this first, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and even if, you know, this is contingent upon us buying that equipment and using it, and I see no reason why we can't, but the 4 folks that we're gonna train to use it, if, say, the week before they hit the lottery and they quit, even if we contract with an outside firm to do this, we're still gonna save a boatload of money, because that wouldn't cost us more than $50,000 to have them come in and do it.
So when do we go for the ban?
Yeah, it's already in works.
Well, it's already been
Okay.
approved,
Right.
so at this point, it's just awaiting closing.
Okay. And you expect that to be,
I expected probably March or April.
It'll be March.
What's the interest rate? You won't know until I guess it closes, but.
Correct, and the initial borrowing is a ban, it's
Okay.
not a bond,
Okay.
okay? And that's only based on disbursements taken. So we aren't gonna pay interest on an originally agreed balance. We're gonna pay interest only on what we've been dispersed.
Okay.
but at some point in time, DOT is gonna come to us and say, we want your 406,000 so-and-so, and at that point in time, we transfer that amount of
We cut them
money
a check.
over to them into that whatever account they have, and then at that point in time,
Right, correct.
we start paying.
Or issue them a check, one or the other.
Okay.
And that, we'll do that after they send me the betterment agreement that we have, and Bill reviews it, and we sign it and send it back. And that'll be due by June, around June, because before they go to bid, they want that money, both our money and the sewer money in the bank.
Right.
How much is the sewer gonna cost?
600 to 100,000?
600, I thought.
600, that's the number I heard.
Remember, Jeffrey, at all from your,
He wasn't around when they, I mean, you were here.
No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't at the finance.
it was in the fall.
It was in the fall.
I think that DOT calculated 600, but I think they allocated 800,
Could be. It
from
could
what I
be.
remember.
Could be.
I believe that's correct, yes.
And, yeah, so I think we're,
And the gas lines are just Central Hudson's responsibility,
Yeah.
whatever they're gonna be.
and the maps that we sent around, DOT didn't provide us with the telephone duct, the Verizon infrastructure is in there. So the one line is gonna be moved over a couple feet to avoid that duct, but I didn't think it was worth resending everything for that, because it's kind of,
I assume you have cable lines in there too.
I think they're overhead.
Over here.
Yeah.
I think cable's all over.
Overall.
I think. But yeah, so that was good news, so the $15,000 that we
So you can make copies?
I will make copies for everybody, and you can take.
But you provided us a similar one like that.
For 1.1, and you can, yep, I will, all right, we'll go before everybody goes.
So that's,
I got money
that's
well
the
spent.
story on,
15,000, yeah. Way.
yeah. I'd still like to, still have an issue with the fact that we got
Okay, Frank.
pay them up front, even $400-some thousand, and start paying interest and them holding our money.
And they don't pay the interest.
No, they're probably, if they're smart enough, they're getting interest
Right.
on $1 million now from the city of Kingston, our 400-some thousand, and the city's 600,000 or whatever they
They're
estimate.
probably getting some percent over LIBOR, you know, through some, vehicle.
And I assume they do the same thing with Central Hudson?
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, Central Hudson's probably not installing their lines. I'm sure they're gonna I mean, Mullen or whoever is doing all the work in the city for gas lines now. I'm assuming that they would just put that out to bid as a bid contract maybe, and the same guy who's putting water lines or sewer lines in might be
Don't
maybe
know.
different, okay.
I don't know.
Depends on how they bid it, I guess. But I don't think Central Hudson's the one that's doing the work, I'm sure they're,
Well, they never do that.
right.
Either DOT's contractor's gonna do it or Central Hudson's
That's right.
contractor's gonna do it, yeah. They don't, they repair their stuff, but they don't actually install anymore.
Okay, SCADA system.
Just waiting on DOH. Everything's been sent in, all their
Okay.
questions have been answered, and I'm waiting for Brock to get to it. We're ready to go with that, once we get that
That's
back.
been there for a while.
But they needed the elevation certificates, and I only sent that at the end of the year.
All right, well,
It took a while
okay,
for
six
B&L to
weeks
do that.
later.
Well, you know, I
Okay.
used to work there. Takes a while.
And then it goes out to bid after that.
Yeah, we're ready, we're all, and he's essentially communicated to our consultant that, you know, whatever we've designed is fine, he just needed, because of where the funding source, we needed the elevation certificates.
Right, because they're really, I mean, this is all IT stuff as opposed to civil engineering
Yeah.
for the most part.
Exactly, and if it wasn't for the grant, we probably wouldn't even look at it. But that's a condition of the grant, that they have to review it. It's not usually something DOH gets involved in, how you communicate with each other, your systems communicate.
Probably wouldn't be bad for them, but they're actually going the other way around, like a government agency, they're getting slashed in regards to funding as opposed to taking on some
Yeah.
other.
I never
part of
thought that, you know, as an organization of water utility people in AWW, we'd be lobbying both DEC and DOH to give them more people. We've written letters for the state budget to fund those agencies so that they have the resources, you know, but,
Come and inspect us more and.
well, just be, you know, to be able to
Yeah.
do what they have to do. I mean, they are kind of important to keep public health.
Binnewater UPS.
I sent out the schedule.
Yeah.
Nothing to add, we're ahead of schedule. In the bills that we've signed tonight is the cost of the UPS, the UPS unit itself is being paid for. Everything's on site and Jim's in progress.
Okay.
So we're good.
Transmission main rehab project.
We had a really good meeting up there the other day. It was a 4, almost 5-hour meeting. If there's a project here that scares me, that's it. But it's gotta be done. And the frightening aspect is your 1927, one main goes up, one main comes down, we're gonna put new mains in, and if we break them, it's a scary prospect. But it's gotta be done. And so we went through it step by step, and this is the order of operations and how it's the schedule and how it's gonna be done, and I feel a little bit better about it. We're at 60% design. They think that they can have the 90% essentially construction documents into DOH by the end of March. And it's their review. We certainly could go out to bid before we get DOH review, but that's kind of silly. I mean, there's no reason to do that. And so we should be good to go. We've done all the environmental stuff we have to do. We've done seeker. The only environmental issue is the bats. So if there is some shagbark hickory, which could be indicative potentially of Indiana bats. So we either have to, if there are any shagbark hickory that we have to take down as we prepare to do this line, we can't do it, can't cut those trees in the summer, or we have to confirm that there are no Indiana bats in those trees.
And that's, there's a couple different projects or areas of this, right?
The main one is the transmission main going up and down.
Right by just below Binnewater.
Then there's the valve, a minor project for valving at Jockey Hill, right, at Sauk Hill Road, Jockey Hill.
Okay.
That's where, when we had the transmission main break in February of President's Week of 2015, that's where we were able to get the valve closed to do the work. couldn't get it open, we had to replace it. So we knew that that was a problem. So that's gonna be done first, and that will help us do the second part. And the third project is relining that transmission main
Up
above the plant that we had the water hammer on. If, of the three, if one has to fall off the table because the bids come in high, that's the one that's gonna fall off the table. I mean, because we're running without it right now, and we can do it at a different time. One of the things I'm gonna approach, and I've already talked to him about it previously, but I think we can do it, is to ask the city engineer to TV that line with the sewer camera, because it's raw water. So I don't have to worry about, you know, the sanitary quality of their little dew buggy. And to see if in fact the joints are blown, to see what the real condition is, so we know how to approach it. So we're gonna do that in-house before they move forward on that project.
Well, is that gonna be done before the 90% design stuff then?
It'll be done in conjunction with it, and that'll be a separate contract.
Okay.
The
But the
reason,
90% is just, are you breaking these three different projects down into, or
no,
different segments
one's
in regards to
a
designs?
repair replacement, no, the design is really on the valve replacement and the other, and this, and the transmission main, and that one would be a
So the lining
secondary.
is not even
We're
something?
gonna pull that out and do that secondary. It's a
Okay.
The discipline to do those two projects, the valves and the transmission main, are likely to be done simultaneously by the same company.
Okay.
The lining is a separate discipline in and of itself, and that would be bid separately. And so, and that's a minor project compared to the other. One of the concerns is the budget, in that right now the valves for Binnewater at the valve yard are buried. And that's problematic because the big valve boxes fill up with junk, and when you need them, it's really, so we put them in vaults, so you'll be able to access them much easier. And that wasn't in the original budget. And we've done some other things to do some cost savings, so I think we'll be okay. But if not,
Well, we may even have some, I mean, we went ahead and have bond money from here too, so I mean, if we're gonna,
yeah, I mean, so we won't really know until we'll have a better engineering estimate.
so the lining
By the
project is a
next
whole,
month.
is just basically a separate part of
A small aspect, but it's a separate, because it's gonna be bid separately.
but this is part of a grant project.
Yes, it's, yes, so we got it as part of the first infrastructure grant, the first round we got.
And so what was the, Rick, do you remember? Okay,
What was the amount?
Oh, okay,
He does.
The total project estimate is about 3.4 million,
Right.
and the grant calculated amount comes to 2,034,000,
Right.
and that would make the loan amount 1,356,000.
The way this worked, you had to have, they do 60, was it 60% bill fund? Was it, yeah, 60?
Yes,
For water projects, the grant would give you 60% of the total project costs, not to exceed, their portion could not exceed 2 million. So Al and I quickly realized if we came up with a project that was about 3.4 million, we could get the maximum $2 million grant. That's kind of how we backed into that. The sewer, the same program for the sewer, they'll only fund 25%, but they have a higher maximum. It's kind of crazy how they divide that up. He and I and Tom Lawston from CDM worked diligently to get that done on their deadline, and then they pushed the deadline back, what, a month?
yeah.
And at the same time they pushed the deadline back a month, they said, you know, we got more money than we thought, you can go up to 3 million. Well, we really didn't have time to adjust it, so that's why we got a little over 2 million.
Yeah, that was very short notice.
Oh, there was no way we could add other stuff or put more bells and whistles in, it was crazy. I'm just like, well, thanks, but no thanks.
And so the bats are what trees? The ones?
Shagbark hickory.
Yeah, but
On
by the going up the
Binnewater, that's the only place we have to cut a tree. Yep. And Bill's working on the other piece of that, which is the easement. He's pretty much nailed that down, he's just got to do the formal aspect of it. Is that not correct?
Yeah, we just have to get the drawings that we're going to pay.
I mean, the owners have consented, so.
Okay, moving on. Lagoon sludge removal.
We're good there. We're done. We've gotten enough material moved from the lagoon to the freeze thaw that we'll be able to in the spring or in the summer to see what this material granularizes at. With alum, if you let it, it's kind of a weird product, if you let it go over a freeze thaw cycle, it breaks the bonds and this pudding goopy junk becomes this nice pebble-sized granular gravel. You know, without chemistry there is no life.
Isn't that interesting? And then you can sell it.
You can, well, and what they do is that you can get a permit, and others have done it, for a beneficial reuse. You mix it with, like 50-50 with sandy loam, and it's topsoil.
Huh.
So, Troy did that for a long time. They used it as a beneficial reuse. And so, they've confirmed that our lagoons are properly sized, they're poorly designed, and that this pudding, it's hard, you know, you gotta get it from this end where it comes in to that end, and there's no effective way to make that move. But the company we hired comes in with a tractor and a manure spreader. They're not a farmer. But they back this thing down the ramp, and it just takes this pudding and kind of takes water up and mixes it and throws it up there, and it works. So we'll see what the material's like, but it looks like we could hire them every year, every other year to come in and move a little bit at $5,000 or $6,000 a year, just put it in our operating budget, and then these lagoons will work the way they're intended.
So the silt that's left behind, does that have to then be emptied out regularly or not?
Oh, that, in the freeze lagoon, yes, it either has to be landfilled, or you gotta find a beneficial use for it.
How frequently? Does that fill up to the point where you can't add any more?
It will, but I mean, we have land to dig other ones, but you could probably stockpile it there, but I think the goal would be what we produce every year, we get rid of every year, and that would make more sense.
So we have to remove some of this material once the weather breaks, or
Well, we
not?
have to see what it's like, yes, yes,
Okay.
we would, absolutely.
So we don't know yet.
What do you mean?
We don't know what condition this is and if
Well,
there's enough to move.
no, I mean, we've seen it in previous years when we've been able to do it ourselves, it'll work.
Okay, so the plan is to remove some of this in the near future, or not?
You see, we don't have much in it, but next year move more in it, but yeah,
Okay, so,
we get rid of what we have, this is kind of an experiment.
oh, okay,
We'll get rid of what we have in there now with our own backhoe and our dump truck. You know, you can landfill, it's probably not the best use to put it in a landfill. But if we could find somebody and apply to the DEC for a permit, that might be a solution. Somebody that wants to get in the topsoil business or is in the topsoil business and wants this amendment to, you know.
You know, it'd be cheaper just let them have it stuff if they're in the top.
Carted away?
Part of the
Yeah,
way.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
just-
Well, that's what Troy did,
right. Just take it away.
take it.
mhm.
Guy up the road, that's what business he was in. And they solved their problem and he got something that he needed.
Well, I'm sure there are people out here in the topsoil business who'd be glad to get it.
Might be, yeah.
Yeah, or anybody who's just trying to fill in things, wants some clean fill, you know, something that,
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I don't know if it's useful for that, but with some other stuff added to it.
yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
Maybe
Makes
some, yeah,
That's a good plan, so every year you'll take out some and,
right, and, yeah, it's just, you know, it's too much. But, you know, we can't afford the $100,000, $100 and some odd $1,000 removal bills every
Mhm.
couple of years. We need a permanent solution that we can just work into our operation, so.
So the future cost, at least for this year, is gonna be minimal, $5,000 or whatever.
Maybe, yeah.
yeah.
And we have a contract or an agreement with CDM to finish the study and make a recommendation.
Okay.
That's what we think the recommendation is likely going to be, because we were up there with it last week and we kind of went through it. Derek has been doing percent solids on it, and it, you know, not obviously in this cold weather, but you know, he knew what we started with in the lagoons and what we're going to end up with. So we'll get it way past 20%.
Good. Sounds like good news.
Yeah, I think so. We just have a way forward.
Okay. Request to purchase the Hydrastop valve insertion tool.
Yeah. So, we had budgeted $45,000 for the tool because my intention was only to buy a tool that went through valve sizes 4 through 8. All this equipment that they sell is scalable. And I thought, well, the majority of our mains are 4 to 8-inch mains in distribution. So we'd start there. That's where the need is. We have maybe 6 miles of 12-inch main in the system. And then we'd buy the adapter kit that would go for the 10-inch pipe, because we have about a mile's worth of 10-inch pipe. 10-inch pipe and 12-inch pipe. But I did get a price on the unit that goes from 4 to 12, and that was $62,000. I said, well, that's more than we budgeted. This was all before the whole 587 roundabout
Right.
thing came about. And I said, well, what's the kit? Well, the kit's $27,000, so it's really not cost effective to do this in 2 pieces.
No.
It really isn't. But it's, so I would ask that we purchase, make a recommendation that we purchase the $62,000 unit. It comes with, it doesn't come with valves. The valves, I have to tell you, a 6-inch valve by comparison is shade under $700. And the Hydrastop insertion valve is about $3,000. So I mean, this is where you can shut something down and put a valve in, that's what you want to do. But in this application, you know, there's only one hole, nobody's out of service, and you get a complete shutdown. So there are real applications for this where it makes a lot of sense. Because we have, you might want to consider either taking all the money, appropriating it out of that bond issue now, or just the overage, and because I think I indicated that we're probably $50,000 in expenses because of these breaks we've had, that Al was not able to budget for, because, I mean, he takes just the overtime is about $35,000 that we've had this year.
Oh, then you're gonna have the restoration of the pavement, another 12 almost.
Yes,
So you're looking at 61.5.
right. Well, I figured that into my $50,000. I believe I did when I did the pavement. I anticipated 11.5.
Great.
Yeah, I did. So I had about 45 in materials, 35 in overtime, and about 11 and a half to 12
Okay.
in pavement. So that comes up to my $50,000. But, you know, if at the end of the year we can afford to pay for that out of our operating budget, that's probably what Al would prefer to do, as opposed to, you know, in debt for 20 years for it.
I don't know, it makes more sense.
But it makes more sense to leave us with the cushion. That would, Al, would you agree?
Yes.
We talked about it for a little
We've,
bit.
in the month of January, we spent just for the distribution, about $26,000 in overtime.
Yes, and there was a couple in December that I added into that total. That happened at the very end of the year, so that runs up. We had our normal weekly payroll is 27,000?
For the shop?
For the whole entire department, it's about, I mean, I sign them every week, they're between 27,
Yes,
around
yes.
27,000 is our
Right.
weekly payroll.
Right.
We had one week there was 39. Like, well, did you make a mistake?
Now, is this winter unusual compared to prior winters?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had winters like this before, but I'd have to go back to like 1991.
Okay, so it's no sense budgeting
So we
for-
don't budget now. What are you saying?
Well, 2015 was,
Well, that was the
Pretty bad.
transmission main break, yeah,
It
that
was
was
pretty
pretty cold.
cold, too, that-
Yep, it was. Al takes explain how you do your overtime calculation for the budget.
Well, I try to use a comparability of 5-year trend. And then I look at spikes in that 5 years whereby, let's say, you may have an anomaly like we did this year. And so I try not to let a spike just overbear the budget. But nonetheless, as I say, I take the 5 years overall trend into account and then look at whatever pay increase has already been authorized per contract. And so naturally, you have to, consider that in terms of the wages and come up with a number that I hope to be correct.
And his numbers are,
Yeah.
this is, and this year's certainly not over. It could all come back, and we could all be back in line, you know, because we could have a real mild rest of the year.
Do you average the spikes into the 5-year average?
I do, but take into account, I do average it, but if I see, you know, a horrendous spike, then I'll modify the average. So,
It's not just strictly mathematical. You look at it and you kind of go, I'll take a little bit off of here.
All right, no, I understand, okay.
So that's also the reason why the meal allowances
All right.
are
Yeah,
up too. I mean,
yes.
we already exceeded the
yes.
budgeted amount.
We got sick eating pizza.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if I have to spend another weekend night eating pizza on the back of the truck with these guys,
Combat pay?
I'm done.
Wow.
I'm done.
So you want a motion to
Yes.
put the Hydrastop valve at 62K into the bond issue for the Roundabout?
Yes, with it.
Is
Is that out?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I move that we put the Hydrastop valve inspection tool into the Roundabout bond issue in the amount of $62,000.
Hey, here's a question. Judy,
Sure.
I mean, is this something you use all the time? Is there any way that like other municipalities could share it, like
No.
Annapolis or?
Yes, we would be happy. This is not just like a tool you lend somebody, but it's something that like they come in with their computer correlator. They don't lend that to us either. They come with it and they use it for us. We'd be very happy to do that stuff for them.
Do we reimburse them for their time, or would they reimburse us for our time?
Well, we've never, this time on this, we incurred $330 to the town of Ulster because they came in and helped us do the computer correlation on a holiday. They brought one of their rank and file guys in, and so I said to Jim quickly, that's not really fair to make your ratepayers pay for that, so he did, he sent us a bill. That's the only time we've ever exchanged financial. If we do this on straight time and planned event, we wouldn't charge them our time and they wouldn't charge us their time.
Okay. Well, as long as it gets to a point where it's just an occasional thing as opposed to, you know.
Every day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, with them as well.
Right.
You know, that so it's kind of a fair trade-off. And they buy the tool, they buy the valve, you know, all that kind of stuff.
So it's really just the use of our manpower and the initial cost of the tool.
And if you look at the way, if you see the demo of the tool, this is really the same process, a little different variation on making a wet tap, a big wet tap. Instead of making the tap on the side of the main, you're making it on the top. But it's, you know, you really need some practice with this. The $62,000 or the $50,000, which was for the smaller tool, involves 3 days worth of
Training.
full on-site training where, you know, they show you one, they work with you on one, and then you do one, so.
So the plan is to use this tool on this 587 project.
Yeah.
And how many valves would we?
Well, I'm thinking 4, 2 12s and 2 8s.
And those valves cost how much?
$3,000 or $4,000 a piece.
So should you put that in?
Yes, that'll be in, that, but that's part of that 1.5 million, I think. that,
Okay.
you
It's
know.
part of the 406,000.
Yes. Well, yeah, I don't think they've included that in, I mean, they did. They included line stop fitting 6-inch, he included $6,000, and there's one, that's probably right. So one of them is in there.
So how many did you say you think we get?
4.
Use 4.
It's on, there's 2 12s and an 8, 2 8s, I think. One of the things we're doing with this project is I've asked them to put in a couple of other valves too, so that we can effectively, you know, the whole idea to scaling it back was that we didn't want to be in this area really digging up and fixing valves. But you certainly could fix a water main break here, water main break over here, because it's just a stream.
Right.
But there's going to be a valve here and a valve here. So if there's ever a break on this line here, just like we do with the railroad, you can just shut it down. You're not putting anybody out of service, and you can come back and fix that when you can. As opposed to going, oh my God, I got all these people out of service because the valves are here, and the water's pouring up out of there. And they did it here as well. So we could you know, so we're putting some, but their valves of the contractor would drop in, and they're like $600, and that's all in that estimate.
Okay. So I would like to bring my motion back.
Okay?
I will second.
Okay.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, carried. Moving on to policy for operator certification, continuing ed.
Yep. We don't really have a huge problem with this now, but, you know, we've had some problems with it in the past, where people just, you know, sign up
It
for
seems like
it.
a good idea.
I
That
just
way
think,
people take it seriously.
they do take it
They don't
seriously.
think that they can just all of a sudden make other plans.
You're right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's the cost is on you.
Well, and then we also have, you know, we all need 30 credits every 3 years. Some people wait and try to get them all in 1 year. That's not how we budget. I mean, we figure there's so many operators and so much credit, and you figure times 10, you get 10 every year. That's what most of us do. There's some of us that are gonna always have more, but it just the way it goes. But I just think and Dennis made one language
One
change.
language change,
Right.
2A, fund replacement as approved by the supervisor.
I left as approved by the supervisor. Makes kind of more sense that you just, you know, you
I don't want the
wouldn't
guy to just go ahead and
get right up the road.
Yeah.
get somebody else, say, oh yeah, he's gonna take my place, and, or the guy doesn't need it, or whatever, so.
We do a lot of the training on site because we're a training facility for New York State AWWA, so we do at least 3, if not 4, in-house right there. Other people come in, you know, so we have 60 operators there. We get a couple of free seats because we host. Doesn't cost us anything. And, we don't pay materials for travel. It's more convenient.
So we need a motion.
I would like to adopt it as a board policy, as just rather than something I put in place. 'Cause-
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'll
So
make
I need a
for that.
motion to,
Motion to accept the changes in the policy for funding operator recertification.
I'll second it.
okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And then the policy for background
This,
checks.
This
Did
is
you say
something,
something?
no, I did not. This is
Okay.
something that the KPD has asked me for. They were very gracious and did background checks, fingerprint background checks on our 2 new employees, which we asked him to do. But he's getting some pushback from the state, and they need a board resolution that says that that this board is requiring criminal background checks on just the people that work in our treatment plant. I mean, they have the ability to do all kinds of things to the water, because they work on it, you know.
Right.
And so we really should know the caliber of the people that we have working here. And so Terry Crozier asked if we would, you know, he's asked me twice, and I keep forgetting to put it on the agenda. I keep having to apologize to him. So I said I didn't think that would be a problem.
No,
because,
this is a no-brainer.
yeah, we really should be doing that.
So we need a motion then?
Yes.
And so the motion is just to allow the KPD
To require criminal background checks on all water treatment plant employees, or treatment plant staff.
okay, got that, Al, that motion?
Yes, it's as the agenda states. Is
Okay.
that correct?
Yes.
Adopt.
Adopt.
Okay, so we need a motion, motion and a second,
I'll second.
okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Carried. Correspondence?
One letter from, I'll summarize it. It's from Jerry Hawkins. He evidently went to Florida and left a forwarding notice with the post office. Somehow the post office mishandled his forwarding notice, so his mail was not forwarded. He did not get his water bill in time. By the time he got it, he incurred a late charge, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and he's asking for forgiveness of the late charge. Jane spoke to him at length and told him that really wasn't possible. Rather than kick it either to Al or me, she just said, you know, just write to the board, because she knows what the answer is gonna be. She just.
The answer is you can't do it.
Right,
Yeah, authority.
right. And she was very honest and told him that. And it's really, the post office made the error. And he asked for all his mail to start being forwarded on December 15th, and it didn't start until December 18th. And so by the time he got the water bill, which was mailed in that December 15th before the 18th, it was late.
So you don't need anything from us other than
No, just write him a letter and
respond.
deny it.
If the board,
I mean, and she
denied it.
she even explained it to him that if we made an error, we would have automatically taken it off. But
How much is it that he's asking for?
I don't even know, Al, do you? I mean,
No, I don't.
I have no idea. I mean, this is his handwritten letter.
Okay.
He doesn't really.
$20 maybe?
I don't know.
I mean, the typical water bill is probably $200, right?
I have no idea. It doesn't say.
Paid mine, it was $216.
He spent a great deal of
10%.
time explaining the postal process. And didn't really tell me how much money it was.
Well, maybe next year that he will have it done a little bit sooner, and have it start forwarding on the 1st instead of the 15th.
All I know is that the post office made the error, according to him. If there's a late charge to be refunded, they should attempt to get it from
He
him.
should go to the post office and have the
Fat
post
chance.
office.
That's why he's coming here.
I think
I like that.
That's why he's coming to you.
Okay, what else?
And we'll accept the late payment from the post office. Work that out.
what's that for 2 years?
Superintendent's report?
That's a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff in January.
My feet are so cold.
Is there any permanent damage? I mean, with all of these
You
things?
know, my
that
feet?
happen?
I don't think so. To the bikes, no. The second break on Linderman Avenue, I've done them, and we created when we dug the first one, because we had to pound through 2 feet of frost.
Yeah.
And so to fix that in this intersection, the second, about a week and a half later, we were up there, we were about 5 feet from the first hole. And I know, I mean, we all know that's because we pounded to get through that
Right,
frost.
right.
But no, you put a band, that's permanent repair.
That's it.
The number of frozen meters, is that high? I mean, that's
No, that's higher.
higher than
25.
what we would normally expect in
Yeah.
normal January?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I mean, and there are a lot of frequent flyers on that. There's, I think Jane can certainly tell you, and I think Al can too, that, you know, there's some people that have frozen meters every year.
Mhm.
You know, there are people that either go away and don't do much, or a lot of absentee landlord circumstances where cellar doors are left open, windows are left open, windows are missing. You know, there's a big hole in this foundation and the draft comes through. Meters freeze, it's not always so much the temperature, it's the temperature with the wind.
Mhm.
You gotta have that in,
Yeah, when the chill one was.
yeah, and so, yeah, we had more than our fair share.
So the meter freezes,
Yeah.
and then eventually it gets warmer and it thaws
And
out.
then the water pours out the bottom.
Okay.
Oh, geez, okay. So that's where all the extra gallons of processing.
But does that, but it doesn't go, the meter is broken, so it's not recording? Or does it?
It depends how it breaks, but yeah, usually it stops once the bottom plate freezes and breaks, it usually, yeah.
Okay, so we're not even getting an accounting of,
Well, they're not using any water, because it's frozen.
no, but
When it breaks, sometimes
if they go away to Florida, I mean, some of these are not just snowbirds, these are people that are living here.
Oh, yeah. They tell
And
you
so
right
obviously,
They know
it
right away.
freezes, and then 3 days later,
Yeah.
it's 50 degrees outside, and it eventually thaws, and all of a sudden, their basement gets flooded.
Right.
Then they shut it off at the shut off, or call a plumber,
If
or
they can.
something to get fixed. I mean, hopefully the snowbirds actually have their water turned off,
Hopefully.
and so it's not even coming into the meter to create a problem.
There's a lot of vacant houses in town, so
Okay.
How many vacant houses do you think there are in Kingston?
400.
Wow.
Now, vacant, for sale,
Unoccupied.
unoccupied, I've had Jane, and the number may have changed because, I mean, we're undergoing a little real estate boom. But these are accounts where the meters are still in the houses
Mhm.
and we're getting 0 reads.
So they're
No
getting,
consumption.
they're getting a minimum quarterly bill.
Right, and we can pull that again, you know, to see if that's
And
changed.
obviously, if we go and do a meter reading and we see a high number and it's vacant, then we're assuming that there must be a leak
That would be a leak
Well,
inside
Side.
after the meter.
Right.
Right, and that you, I mean, our guys they're pretty practiced at looking in the windows, knocking on the door, listening, and you can hear it, sometimes you can see it. Sometimes if it's coming from the second floor, you can see it. The fire department calls us on a regular basis when it starts coming out the cellar windows,
Mhm.
over the transom, under the door, and that kind of thing. And that happens. It's unfortunate, because that ruins the house.
Oh,
That water damage is horrendous. But when the last time we did it was a few months ago, there were 400 houses with zero consumption. And it's not that the meters are stopped, because Jane is militant about sending the meter guys out to check on those. Two quarters in a row, we get the same reading. We got eyes on that meter. Is it vacant? Is it? And if you see there's signs of life, the trash is out, there's cars in the driveway, then we make an appointment to get in, because then the chances are the meter's stopped. But she's very proactive about that. And she's doing same reading twice in a row. She issues a service order, and Ryan goes out there, and once a week or so, he takes those handful of service orders and checks them all out.
And she's very good about looking and seeing if there's excessive use too, so if they see
We do
something.
an edit. We do an edit before they send out bills, and they catch all that.
We send out high read notices.
Right, the postcards,
Yeah,
Correct.
even before the building's out, because a couple of buildings I work with, I've gotten a
Yeah.
couple of those where if toilet might be running or
Yeah.
something else
Right.
going on.
or it could just be that, the property's changed hands, and the new owners are using more water
More
than the
than-
old owners, because maybe it was vacant for half that quarter, during that transition. So there's always a reason. She's really pretty amazing about it. They're her customers.
Okay, motion to accept the superintendent's report?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Joanne, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Executive session?
Yeah, I got, couple quick things.
Okay. Motion to go into executive session. Before we go into that,
Yeah.
the meter review, I don't know if you put that?
Oh, I was gonna mention, not in executive session, but we had a meeting with Johnson Controls today.
Okay.
We put what they call the push-pull, the test of the small meters, on hold. Not only were we busy changing up frozen meters, but the frozen meters changes which meters you test, because we're not going back any meter that's newer than 5 years, and we just put 30 meters in the system, or thereabouts. But also, you don't want to do it when it's that cold out, because if the valve under the meter doesn't work, and you have to go back and operate the curb stop to do that change out, you certainly don't want to have to dig through a foot of ice and snow to do it, and so it's easier to put it off till March. We met today. I think we'll come up with some dates, but the push-pull will take about 2 weeks. The company will come in and take care of it, but we're gonna send out the letters on our stationery to customers, because can you imagine if you got a letter from Johnson Controls in your mailbox?
Throw it away.
You wouldn't even open, I wouldn't even open
I
it.
wouldn't know.
So it's gonna come from the Kingston Water Department. We're gonna,
Explaining that they've been selected as this
Yeah.
part of this
yeah,
audit,
yeah.
and that will be
And
making
they'll
arrangements.
be contacting you, your home has been selected, blah, 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 it'll take this amount of time to go through all that. To do that whole process. We're gonna probably do, 66 is the sample size for the 5/8" meters, and they're probably gonna give us 166 to pick from. Because they know that we're gonna get out there and you're gonna go in and it's gonna be a galvanized service, which we don't wanna touch, or the valve doesn't work. There's gonna be reasons why you wanna move on. You don't wanna get stuck in the weeds with getting the guy's plumbing all apart and not being able to put it back together. Just, that's not working. So, that's, and Al and Jane will go through that list before we go out to make sure that it isn't a customer that they know we shouldn't go there. Somebody's away, or it's just not representative, or they're difficult, or there's some other song and dance. So,
Okay.
Okay,
Executive session.
executive session,
And
you have a
it's-
motion?
And it's,
Second?
I'll make that motion.
it's for personnel.
Okay.
I mean, for,
That's second.
Okay. Wait for Clark to leave and go into executive session.
Do I still, do I leave?